So, in the film, there's a line that Alton is not a weapon, not a savior, something else. So, what's the something else, Jeff? I have to know.
I think he's a son, and I think that's it. You know, I think he is a son that's becoming his own person, and that's it. That's the other thing, or that's really the only thing, because he was never the other two.
Right, that's what I thought too. That's the answer I expected, actually. So the film is largely an allegory for what it really means to be a parent.
Yes.
Having ultimately to let go of a child in certain respects, but never to let go in terms of unconditional love.
Sure.
Is there such a thing as too much parental love or too much expression of that love?
No, absolutely not. 100%. It's amazing to me, I think, how inclined we are as parents, and I'll put myself in this category, I'm not just judging other parents, how inclined we are as parents to project ourselves onto our kids. You know, what we want them to be, what we think they should be. We can't help ourselves, because we do want them to be okay, and all we know is our own life experience, so it makes sense that we would, you know, not want them to make the same mistakes we made, not want them to make any mistakes. But I think the essence of being a parent, and kind of what I was grappling with when I was writing this and trying to understand that, is just giving up. Giving up that control, because the control's a myth anyway. It doesn't really exist. We have no control over who our children become or whether or not they're safe. We really ultimately have no control over that. So what we have to do is define who they are, help them understand who they are, not project ourselves onto them, and hope that before they leave us, and they will leave us, that they have a good handle on the people on the person they want to be. You know, I think that's the job of a parent. When we're at our best, which is rare.
The kernel of the film for you had to do with a kind of family crisis, is that right?
Yeah, that's what really got me thinking about it in a serious way. You know, I'd had kind of a lot of the story points worked out. I knew there would be a father, I knew there would be a son, but I didn't really know what I wanted to say about that relationship. I was in the first year of fatherhood myself, and my son became sick, and it kind of woke me up. You know, in that first year of parenthood, you're sleep deprived. You're really selfish, actually. You're really thinking about, like, well, what has this new child done to my life? How has it changed my life? Mainly because they're so young at that point. You're not talking to them. You're not really interacting with them as much as even a year and a half in. And with my son getting sick about 8 months in, it kind of washed all that other stuff away. It made it appear as extraneous as it really is. And it made me just realize how precious my son was. And that directly fed into the behavior of Mike Shannon and Kirsten Dunst's character in this film.
Let's talk a little bit about faith in the film. It seems there's a fine line between the frontier of scientific knowledge and religion. In the film, there's the character played by Adam Driver, and also the character played by Sam Shepard, the former being a scientist working for the government, the latter being a cult leader. Did you intend for them to be sort of two opposing poles, I guess?
Yeah, and more than that, actually. I feel like I'm developing as a writer. It doesn't mean I'm writing better movies. It just means I'm having a better understanding of the mechanics of what I'm doing. And I really started to realize, even after Mud, that in order to write complete characters, you really have to think about their worldview. You really have to build a belief system for them, because we all have one. Even if we don't prescribe to an organized religion, like, we at some level have thought about our place in relationship to the universe. So, number one, I'm just trying to be a thorough writer.
Yeah.
But for this film specifically, I knew it would be a film about belief, because that seemed to be what parenthood is. You know, parenthood kind of strikes at the core of faith, which is we don't know what our children will become, but we have faith that they will become something good, right? So that is going to be the top level, form of belief that we're working on, the belief these two parents have in their kid. But every other character is going to represent a type of belief as well. Joel Edgerton's character is going to represent the agnostic. Adam Driver's character is going to represent a spiritualist. Sam Shepard's character, and those emissaries that he sends out on his behalf, are going to represent an organized religion gone to extremism. I don't believe in bad guys, but I do very much believe in evil. And I think organized religion can be a source of evil, and I'll explain. I grew up Methodist, went to church on the weekends. I believe great, great good can come from organized religion. I think the problem with it is when people start to figure out how they feel about their place in the world and the universe, when they put together the words and the order of things, whether it comes from the Bible or any other place, that's a good thing. That's a journey we're all on, right? I think when people get those principles worked out for themselves so clearly that they say, you know what, I think I have this figured out. And in fact, I'm going to believe in this so much, I think you should believe in it. In fact, I don't even think you should believe in it. I'm going to make you believe in it. Yeah. That's when religion starts to become dangerous. There's a character in the film played by Bill Camp who, he has a moral compass of his own. He very much knows the difference between right and wrong. But he lets his religious dogma trump that. And that's evil.
It also would be possible, but I don't know if it was intentional, to view Michael Shannon and Kirsten Dunst as a kind of Joseph and Mary.
I think that's a pretty obvious. I think that's a pretty obvious conclusion. I think it's my job not to make that conclusion. I think it's my job to understand something about my audience as much as I understand my characters. Yeah. So I'm saying I'm building a belief system for my characters. Well, I know that the audience is going to walk into the theater with their own. Maybe they're Christian, maybe they're Buddhist, maybe they're atheists. But no matter what, they're going to walk into the theater with a worldview. And it's not my job to make a film that tries to direct their worldview or impose upon it. Right. It's my job to write a story that's open enough, that's open just enough, so that they can interpret my story through their worldview.
How important was it for you that the scientific element be more than just a MacGuffin? You've said that you didn't really work out a rule book, but did you think out a bit more than the film reveals? It would seem that you must have.
Certainly. But I throw some red herrings in there. You know, this idea of ley lines, which is a total pseudoscience, you know, things like this. But even the religious range, to a degree, is a giant red herring, kind of, down the lines that you're talking about. Yeah, let everybody think the boy's the Messiah, you know. Sure. I think I built just enough to know the essence of where I was going without the details. And I think it was important for me to stop short of adding too many details. Now, it's hard to talk about without going into big time spoilers for the end of the film. Right. But I think, though, what you can talk about is kind of the essence of what I was going for, which is kind of a spirituality. It's not saying I know what connects the universe, because who does? But it's saying, God, I really hope that something does. You know, there's a difference in those two things. It's a desire to want more, and that's really what Adam Driver's character represents. You know, he's a man of science. He's a mathematician. I think he probably has an understanding, and he's smart enough to know the limitations of his own mind, and that there might be math that is beyond his understanding of math. There might be a connectivity that totally is in line with the natural order of things, but that he can't fully perceive. And that, I think, that's kind of the closest you get to spirituality in the film.
Speaking of red herrings, I also noticed, if I saw it correctly, a book called The Hermetic Line on screen. Is that an actual theosophical book, or is that...
Was that at Eldon's house? At the old guy's house?
I think it might have been, yeah.
Yeah, we made all those up. I can't take credit for that one specifically. I know we made a book about ley lines specifically. Pretty sure my production designer made that up.
Yeah, it wasn't on Amazon, so I thought that might
Yeah,
have
no,
been
we
a
probably
clever
made
prop.
it up. Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about the symbolic value of the boy's powers, the quaking, the light from the eyes? Were those intuitive or something that you sort of intellectualized in the conception of them?
Well, being on a press tour for 2 weeks, I've certainly started intellectualizing. They were probably a little bit more intuitive to start with. If you think about it, because these things kind of come up, it just makes sense to you. And then it is on a press tour that you have to go back and really analyze what you've done. It's like going to the shrink. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I started to think about this boy being some kind of conduit in this universe, conduit to something that's beyond us that we don't know. And if you start to think about how the universe communicates, it communicates through light. Like the reason why we know about stars is because they send us their light. So it would make sense if the method of communication that this boy is empowered with would be light. And then, of course, the eyes are the source of the soul, blah, blah, blah. He shoots laser beams out of his eyes. This is the conclusion.
Yeah. It also puts me in mind of the title, which really feels right. How did you happen on that? And were you thinking at all of Twilight Zone, the movie? Because I went there when I heard that title.
Can I let you know a little secret?
Yeah.
I've never seen Twilight Zone.
Oh, really? Yeah. Have you got that question a lot on the tour?
Yeah, and I know that the song was used in it's in the opening credits.
Yeah, opening sequence.
Yeah. The title came before almost anything. I was struck with this initial idea. Wouldn't it be cool? These two guys in the car moving fast through the night. We call it Midnight Special. Honestly, it just kind of came to me because it sounded kind of badass. And more than that, it sounded evocative of the colors and the tone and everything. It felt like a midnight drive-in movie,
That is a double meaning, if not a triple meaning.
Certainly. Yeah. I think as you start to work backward and apply some reverse logic to it, it starts to have more meaning than I even originally intended.
So you used a combination of practical and special effects. Can you talk a bit about both of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think Christopher Nolan has shown us that if you can push things toward the practical, it's better. I mean, the links that I heard they went to on Interstellar to ground all of those effects seems pretty remarkable. We're of course not operating at that level, but we wanted these things to feel organic. When I thought about the light in the boy's eyes, for instance, I didn't think of it as a superpower. I thought of it as something real. And so it makes sense that you would try to do it practically on set. So for him, we built this rig with these very, very bright LED lights in the fronts of the glasses. And we ran a wire down his back to a 9-volt battery and a dimmer switch. And the beautiful thing that happens is when you're shooting on film, these beautiful anamorphic lenses from Panavision, that real light starts to activate inside the lens and ricochet off all these pieces of glass, and all these beautiful organic lens flares just start to come. And I know J.J. Abrams uses lens flares all the time. I'm late. I'm late to the party, but it seemed like a very honest way to capture this stuff. So it was really great in editing as well, because we were editing real lens flares, because 9 times out of 10 the flares were so broad that it would cover the rig we built for them. Every once in a while they'd have to delete a wire or something, but it ended up working out really, really well.
You mentioned shooting on film. How were your other films shot? Were they
All film.
All film, yeah. That's what I thought.
And this isn't all film. Mm-hmm. I made one rule: shooting in a moving car at night was on the Alexa, which is digital. But that's because I think the reason why we shoot on film is because it represents the human experience the best, in my opinion. Believe it or not, as sharp as a lot of people's eyesight is, it's not as crisp as video. It's just not.
Yeah.
It doesn't represent the way that I see the world. Film does, for whatever reason. And I'm no scientist, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
That's how it works for me. But when you're in a car at night moving film betrays itself, because that's not how our eyes work. There's no way to hold the relationship between the foreground exposure and the background exposure on film in car at night. So we chose Alexa for that, and I think it worked quite well. It's far more representative of the human eye.
What or whom gave you the encouragement to think a little bigger, or in the studio space, if you will? Was this project developed for Warner's? Did you bring it to them, write it on your own?
I wrote it on my own, and I took it to them. But I wrote it hoping that they, or a place like Warner Brothers, would take it on. I took it to them specifically, didn't take it to anybody else, and said I want to become a Warner Brothers director. I think you guys would really do great by this film. I like the way you have released other films. I really like your marketing materials, and I like the actors, or I like the directors that you stand behind. I want to be on that list.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't taking it in to be developed or to get notes. I was just kind of taking it in, looking for a partner. And I found a really, really good one. They've been really, really good to me and to the film. But I think to answer your question, this film was a progression in my trajectory, excuse me, as a filmmaker. I definitely wanted it to be bigger, but I definitely didn't want it to be too big. You know, this is, I say, I didn't take all the gloves off. You know, I haven't done that yet.
There's more in the bag to pull
Yeah.
out. Yeah. Can you talk a bit about Michael Shannon's process as you perceive it? You've been unusually privy to it, of course, having worked with him on all 5 of your films.
Mm-hmm. Mike's a very straightforward, pragmatic guy, and I think that's why we get along, because I'm kind of that way too. I think we have these kind of deep feelings about life and views on the world, but we don't sit around and kind of bloviate, except in press conferences,
Right.
about them. You know, we just we witness them, and we feel them, and I think we try and express them through filmmaking. And he's kind of my counterpart in that. You know, he kind of embodies this type of man that I knew growing up, which is a person that feels quite intensely all these things out in the world, but maybe doesn't express them as well as he should, or maybe just doesn't care enough to express them. Doesn't think you need that from him, so he keeps them very close to the vest. But you still sense them inside the person, and that's Mike, you know. And because of that, he makes me a considerably better writer and filmmaker, because I can leave things that are not specifically said on the page to him, knowing that he'll deliver them through his face.
And did you guys meet before Shotgun Stories or on that project?
First time I met him was 2 weeks before we started making Shotgun Stories, when he stepped off the plane to come make the movie. I had seen him do some other stuff, and I wrote that part for him, but no, I didn't know him.
Obviously, some other 80s films served as tonal or aesthetic inspirations. Can you talk a bit about which films particularly?
Sure, the go-to ones are Starman and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think they're both great films, and I just think they did a really good job of grounding the world they showed. You know, when I think about 70s American suburban life, it's hard to find a better depiction of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. A lot of people just talk about the aliens and stuff, but the way he showed American life was very representative of the life I was seeing, you know, out my front door. And the idea of taking a film that could go to such extraordinary places but feel so grounded was very much, I mean, that kind of inspired all my films.
Lastly, because we're running out of time, sure. Your next film is Loving. What's your take on that real-life material, or your angle of entry to that story?
You know, I saw this amazing documentary that was on HBO called The Loving Story. The producers sent me that. the producers of the documentary and the producers of the feature film, they asked me if I'd be interested in turning it into a narrative film. And if you know the story, Richard and Mildred Loving were an interracial couple married in 1958, which was illegal in Virginia at the time. They were arrested, jailed, and exiled from the state for 25 years. And it's a film like just dripping with political consequence, with social consequence, you know, talking about race, talking about marriage equality, topics that are very, very important to our society right now. Within that, though, you found these two characters who were extraordinarily simple people. They were from a really small town in Virginia. Town's too big a word, a community called Central Point. And they genuinely did not have a political angle for doing what they were doing. They did not want to be part of a movement. They were not looking for any attention. They just wanted to be left alone and be allowed to love who they love. And I think in this time where these political and social conversations are so severe, and they deserve to be severe, it's very easy when a topic like race or a topic like equality comes up, people get entrenched in their political positions. They move to their corners and they get ready to fight. And the Loving stand in the middle of that fight without any position except that they loved each other. And I found that to be this clarifying idea and very much something worth making a movie about.
Well, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. Continued success with the film.
Thanks a lot.